This is the Resistance Report for March 13th, 2017. I want to talk about health care, particularly Trump care, also remind you of some of the other issues still pending, and take your questions. The big news of the day is that the Congressional Budget Office, now this is the office set up by Congress in 1974 to help Congress understand the costs and consequences of any major bill coming up before Congress. That Congressional Budget Office gave out a report today that showed that under Trump care, let's call it Trump care, this is the Republican alternative to Obamacare, to the Affordable Care Act. Under the Republican alternative, Trump care, 24 million people will lose their health care over the next 10 years. 24 million people will lose health insurance over the next decade. And even next year, 14 million Americans will lose their health insurance. Now, obviously, this is not good news to Republicans. This was a major blow to the Republicans who have been touting this as a replacement for Obamacare, for the Affordable Care Act. This is not a replacement. The Congressional Budget Office makes it very clear that this is not anywhere close to a replacement. You have tens of millions of people losing their coverage. That means this is, by definition, not a replacement. Donald Trump said in his campaign, and also since he was elected over and over again, he said, we're going to replace Obamacare with something beautiful, and nobody will lose their coverage, unquote. Well, 24 million people over the next 10 years, 14 million people next year lose coverage. Republicans are already responding. They already, over the weekend and even last week, they knew something bad was coming. They didn't know how bad the report was going to be. They started to attack the Congressional Budget Office. In particular, they started to attack the director, a fellow named Keith Hall. Now, what you need to know about Keith Hall is he is a conservative economist who Republicans have relied on for years. He was a major critic of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and he was put into his place as director of the Congressional Budget Office by Republicans, by congressional Republicans. So when they say, as Sean Spicer said last week, you can't count on the the Office of Management and Budget is something else. You can't count on the CBO for accuracy. Then what is he talking about? Where do you find accuracy? You're not going to find accuracy in the White House or the Office of Management and Budget, which is part of the White House. You rely on, since 1974, we have relied on the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan. Other Republicans are probably saying to themselves, we better not allow this to be enacted, because if 14 million people lose their health care next year, you can say goodbye to a lot of Republicans in Congress. If 24 million people over the next decade lose their health care, you can say goodbye to a lot of senators. In other words, from a standpoint of just self-interest and survival by Republicans, this is not only bad news because it sends a signal that this new Trump care creation is terrible for people, for most people, but it also is going to be a huge political liability when people start losing their health insurance. And by the way, we're talking about people. We're not just talking about data. We're not talking simply about politics. We're talking about 24 million Americans who are counting on the Affordable Care Act right now and Medicaid expansion, and they will lose their coverage. Many of these people, it turns out, are older and more rural, and they are also lower income. They're just above the poverty level. What does that mean? What does that tell you? It should tell you that these are Trump voters. In other words, the brunt of this Trump care proposal is going to be borne by people who voted for Donald Trump. How about the beneficiaries? Who's going to win? Well, the big winners are people who are quite wealthy. In fact, the 400 richest Americans are going to get a tax cut because they're no longer going to have to pay for and subsidize Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. That tax cut is equal to about $7 million a year per person if you're in the 400 richest Americans. You get a tax cut $7 million per household if you're filing jointly in the top 400. And at the same time, 24 million people, 14 million next year, are losing their health coverage. The other thing you ought to understand, and this is important, and this is part of the report today, is that the Congressional Budget Office said there is no death spiral in Obamacare. Republicans keep saying, remember, that Obamacare can't survive. It's in a death spiral. Costs are going up too fast. Actually, the analysis of the Congressional Budget Office, remember, headed by a Republican appointee, a Republican economist who was skeptical and continues to say he's skeptical of Obamacare, the analysis was that there is no death spiral for Obamacare at all. In fact, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, if it was kept in place, would do just fine. Some other pieces of the report that you need to focus on is that although Obamacare subsidies cap the amount that anybody has to pay for coverage, so that even though if premiums go up, the subsidies go up under Obamacare, that's not what the Republicans are doing. Under Trump Care, there is no adjustment if premiums go up. Under Trump Care, under the Republican plan, you get a fixed amount, a flat $4,000 tax credit. And if you're older, you might get a little bit more. Under Obamacare, insurers could not charge older people more than 3 times what they charge younger and healthier people. Under the Republican plan, they can charge 5 times what they charge younger people. So obviously, if you are older, if you are of lower income, if you are rural, if you are a Trump voter, especially, not entirely, especially, you are being shafted by the Republican plan. Now, here's another thing you ought to know. Who are the people and what are the states that are going to do very, very well? Well, I said to you already, the rich are going to do very, very well because they won't have to put in as much as they're now putting in terms of support for Obamacare. All of those taxes that the rich now pay will be repealed as part of the Republican plan. Where do the rich people live? They live in New York and California and Chicago and Massachusetts. And are those red states or blue states? Those are blue states. Those are Democratic states. So what this Republican plan does, amazingly, is it reduces the tax burdens on people in blue states, in Democratic states, and it takes the health care away from people in red states, especially from Trump voters. Does this make political sense to you? Because it doesn't to me. Now, obviously, there is also a human story here, because even with the Affordable Care Act, still we have a lot of tens of millions of Americans who do not have health care coverage. The Affordable Care Act was a step in the right direction. In my view, we should have a single-payer plan. Like most other advanced nations have, it would be cheaper, it would be better, it would be more efficient, it would cover more people at a lower cost and provide better health care. But we don't. We have a system that relies on for-profit, private health insurers who, incidentally, are merging as fast as they can, becoming Goliaths. There was one health insurance company that has come out in favor of Trump Care, and that is Anthem. Why did Anthem buck the tide? Everybody else is against it. The American Medical Association, physicians, hospitals, everybody is against this Republican alternative. Why did Anthem buck the tide? Well, maybe it has to do with the fact that Anthem has been trying to merge with Cigna. And its merger is now in the hands of the Justice Department. And the Justice Department is now in the hands of Jeff Sessions and Donald Trump, who have already indicated that they might be willing to go along with this merger. And indeed, somebody from Anthem is in line to become Assistant Attorney General for the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department. Talk about a swamp. By the way, one final point I want to make about all of this swamp called the Trump Care or the GOP or the Republican alternative, the so-called replacement for the Affordable Care Act. Medicaid, that is the program for lower-income people, healthcare program passed in 1965, along with Medicare. Medicaid is gutted by this Republican program, 25% cuts by 2026, 25% lower than it would otherwise be getting. So where are all of these savings going? They are going to go into not only the pockets of wealthy people in terms of not having to pay the taxes they now pay for the Affordable Care Act, they also will be getting, and I guarantee you this is what Paul Ryan and Donald Trump have in mind, and Mitch McConnell, they will also be getting a big income tax cut. It's called reverse Robin Hood. Take from the poor and redistribute to the rich. Take from the people who are less well off and also less healthy and give to the healthier and the wealthier. In my book, this doesn't fly. In my book, this is immoral. And we ought to be saying that, all of us. And by the way, Jeff Sessions, speaking of immorality, he lied under oath to a congressional committee not long ago. In the midst of all of this coverage of the Trump Care, so-called replacement for Obamacare, don't for a moment forget about what is going on. We've got Jeff Sessions lying under oath. Why isn't he being forced to resign? We've got Donald Trump 9 days ago accusing Barack Obama, his predecessor, of wiretapping him in the Trump Tower during the campaign. And Trump has come up with no evidence at all. In fact, today, Sean Spicer said, oh, well, Donald Trump, President Trump, didn't really mean wiretapping when he said wiretapping, when he actually wrote in the tweet wiretapping. He didn't mean wiretapping, he meant surveillance and other things. Other things? What kind of surveillance? This is the most serious charge ever leveled at a president of the United States by another president of the United States, at a preceding president of the United States by a current president of the United States. And there is no evidence, and nobody is holding Donald Trump accountable. He missed the deadline today. He was supposed to, the White House was supposed to come up with evidence. The House Intelligence Committee said, by the end of Monday, close of business Monday, we want any evidence the White House has that, in fact, the Obama administration or Barack Obama wiretapped Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, and no evidence has been forthcoming. There's something called accountability, folks. These people, Jeff Sessions, Donald Trump, the Republicans in Congress who came up with this plan to so-called repeal and replace Obamacare, they are public servants. They're your servants. They are my servants. They're supposed to be working for you, and they're supposed to be working for me, and they are not being held accountable. We need to hold them accountable, and that's why you and I and everybody else we know has got to dive into the 2018 midterm elections right now. Find out who is running, who's running in a primary, get involved in those primary elections, get involved in the general elections, support the candidates who are willing to stand up to this nonsense. It's worse than nonsense. It's tyranny. It's complete abdication of responsibility to the public. Your questions. Christy Cahill, is there any way to sue the government for our Social Security taxes we have paid? Christy, no. And Social Security is not going to be destroyed. There is no program other than Medicare that is more popular with the American public. If the Republicans, including Donald Trump, tries to take your Medicare and your Social Security that you have paid into away, there will be hell to pay. Rudy K. Can you please explain why the repeal and replace bill will only require a simple majority to pass the Senate? Rudy, it will be coming up to the Senate as what's called a reconciliation bill. There is a Senate rule that allows tax bills, essentially, to be passed with only 51 votes. And the House bill and the Senate version, therefore, will be considered to be tax bills, because essentially this is a tax and it's a redistribution. Of course, it's redistribution in the wrong direction. So it only requires 51 votes. That's what a reconciliation bill is all about. Michael Rohrer, the Congressional Budget Office report states that Trump Care will save $337 billion from the federal deficit. How much of that is estimated to be phantom savings from shifting health care costs onto state budgets? Michael, good question. I'm sure part of that is phantom savings, but part of that also is not going to be permanent savings, because Donald Trump plans, as you know, a huge increase in the military budget, a 10% increase, $54 billion per year. That would basically take up almost all of the $337 billion over a 10-year period. And also, beyond that, Donald Trump is planning a big corporate tax cut. So all of that $337 billion is already spoken for in terms of a big military buildup and also a big corporate tax cut, not even to mention the tax cut, the individual tax cut that we expect Donald Trump to propose and the Republicans also to propose. Trish Abadaka, what will happen if California votes for a single-payer system? Will it work? Well, Trish, California could very well report out, California legislature and the governor could sign a single-payer system. I think it would work. California is big enough. California has 1 out of every 8 American citizens in California. It's the 7th largest economy in the world. It would be a very appropriate place to try a single-payer system. And if it did pass in California, and if it were implemented in California, we would have a model for the rest of the country in terms of how to do health insurance for everyone at a low cost and also provide good quality coverage. Maria de Marteller, if we all boycotted superfluous spending, would that make any difference in Washington? Maria, I don't know what exactly is superfluous spending, but no, that wouldn't make any difference. The economy depends on a certain amount of spending, obviously, and it's not just spending by the middle class, it's also spending by the poor. The poor really do need more money. A lot of the middle class, in terms of the lower middle class, the old working class, also could use additional cash. A lot of people are strapped terribly between especially housing costs and other related costs right now. So I would not recommend that we, all of us, stop spending. You say superfluous spending, but what you consider to be superfluous and what a lot of lower income people might consider to be superfluous may not be exactly the same thing. Jay Weiss, there have been 435 members of Congress since 1912. Previously, it grew along with our population, though not according to any set proportion? Would having a Congress that grows alongside our population improve representation? Well, Jay, I don't really think so. Each of these 435 members of Congress represent about a certain proportion of the population. If you added more, I think Congress is actually too large, but if you added more members of Congress, I think it would just be unwieldy. It doesn't mean it would be less or more representative. I think it would be less representative. The big problem is money in politics. What we want to do is get the Koch brothers and all of the big financial institutions and all the big corporations and all of the billionaires, get their money out of politics. We could have a much smaller and leaner Congress that was not bought for and paid for, and we do much better. Andy Schmidlin, what are we going to do for the 2018 elections if Republicans keep gerrymandered districts? Cindy, I'm sorry. Cindy, we've got to get rid of gerrymandering. Now, it's easier said than done. California did it. California had very badly gerrymandered districts and a referendum in California. Not every state can do a referendum. If your state is one, sponsor a referendum that says, just like California, we're going to take the districting decisions, the decisions about what the shapes of districts are and where the lines are going to be drawn. We're going to take it out from under the legislature and we're going to give it to an independent citizens commission. It's worked quite well in California. I think that's necessary. Oh, the other thing we can do, and I hope if you don't have a referendum system in your state, the other thing you can do is help bring cases in the federal courts. There are a number of them already saying that certain kinds of gerrymandering have a disparate impact on African Americans and Latinos, and therefore violate the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. Christina Ogden, Trump was asked to provide proof of Obama's wiretapping. Since we know he won't be able to provide any, will there be any tangible repercussions? Christina, the Republicans are in control of Congress. There's not going to be any tangible repercussion, I don't think. What could there be? The only tangible repercussion is if Republicans begin seeing polls that show that Trump's popularity is decreasing to such an extent that those Republicans are in danger of not being elected if they continue to support Trump. And that means, in order for Trump's poll ratings to go down, and I'm not talking about only among Republicans, I mean about among independents as well, because independents count. In order for that to happen, you and I and everybody else have got to continue to be a part of this resistance. And by that I mean sharing information about all of the ways in which this administration is acting contrary to laws and the Constitution, sharing information about Trump's conflicts of interest, sharing information about all of the ways in which Donald Trump and his tweets and his derogatory comments about the courts, about the press, about critics, all are unbecoming and actually inappropriate to a president. How he and his comments concerning his predecessor characterize his predecessor as weak, but worse than that, he characterized Obama as sick. Is that conduct becoming a president? Is that faithfully executing the law of the Constitution as presidents swear an oath of allegiance to? You see, spread all of this. Make sure people understand it. Make sure people see it. You're not going to necessarily convince a Trump voter. But remember, only 24% of the electorate voted for Donald Trump. There are many independents out there. There are many people who did not even vote. They need to understand what's going on. Next question. Two more questions. This is from Shana Gutierrez. How do we deal with the executive order signed today about restructuring the executive branch? Well, Shana, what Trump wants to do is dramatically shrink the number of federal employees. What does this mean as a practical matter? As a practical matter, it means people are not going to get their Social Security checks on time. Their other checks, their processing of Medicare. People are also going to wait longer on the telephone to find anybody who's going to answer their questions about basic government programs. Laws are not going to be enforced, whether it's tax laws or labor laws or health and safety and environmental laws. They're not going to be enforced. They're not going to be enforcement resources. And we've got to get out this as well. If, in fact, Donald Trump does shrink the government as much as he says he is, we've got to be able to report the consequences of that. Final question. From Holly Hill. Can our country survive all of this? Holly, of course we can survive all of this. We are enormously resilient. In fact, I think that the Congressional Budget Office report today showing that 24 million Americans will lose coverage under Trump care is the beginning of the end. In many respects, can you imagine being a Republican voting for this now? How do you face your constituents, most of whom are going to lose their health care because of this, many of whom? How do you justify what you are doing to your constituents? You see, Holly, do not ever underestimate the capacity of the American people to understand, ultimately, eventually, what is going on. Donald Trump might be able to fool a lot of people. He's a con man. He's basically a con artist. He's a marketing man. He's a brand manager, his own brand. But Donald Trump will not prevail. The Republican Party itself cannot possibly prevail because the Republican Party is a shell that incorporates some completely contradictory elements. You've got people who are libertarians, who are fighting with people who are social conservatives, who want to impose their views on other people. You've got these economic nationalists in the Trump administration, in the White House, who are very much at odds with the business community. You've got millions of Trump voters who are, as I've said, going to be shafted. If they don't know it now, they will know it very shortly. And you have more Americans who are angry and enraged by what this administration is doing vis-a-vis the environment or voting rights or anything else you want to talk about than I have ever seen, at least since the anti-Vietnam War movement. So, Holly, when you say, can our country survive all this, I say, absolutely. Believe in this country. Believe in our resilience. Believe that people like you and others, your neighbors, your friends, everybody else, are organizing and mobilizing to get rid of Trump and his enablers in the Republican Party. That ends tonight's Resistance Report. There's a possibility I will be in Washington tomorrow, although given the weather reports, I may not be. So, hope to see you tomorrow.